discussion that we had, we talked about the policies that have been designed and formulated in India for the purpose of rural development, to achieve the objective of rural development. We also had a brief look at the different policies or different schemes which have been now implemented in India to speed up the pace of rural development. Now it is the time for us to take a detailed look at all the policies. So you would remember that I had initially started with the schemes which are spearheaded by the Ministry of Rural Development. Here in this particular video session also, I'll be following the same sequence, and we'll be first discussing the schemes that are spearheaded by the Ministry of Rural Development. And the first scheme that is there is the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. Now, what is the objective of this particular scheme? The objective is livelihood security in rural areas, so that people in the rural areas, they may get some gainful employment for at least some days in a particular year, and they may be able to earn some money and they may be able to earn their livelihood. So basically this is a livelihood security scheme. And the second objective which is there, the primary objective of course is to provide livelihood security to the residents of the rural areas, but the second objective is to create durable assets such as roads, such as canals, ponds, wells, check dams, irrigation networks in the villages. So the basic idea is that the people who will be working under this scheme, who will be providing their manual labor under this scheme, they would also be creating some kind of durable assets, which ultimately would help improve the economy of the village. So what are the various provisions in this particular scheme? 100 days of guaranteed wage employment in a financial year to every household. Now mark this, that it is basically providing guaranteed wage employment, which means there is a guarantee that the employment would for sure certainly be provided to the households which seek employment. Secondly, the 100 days which have been provided for under this particular scheme, this is meant for the whole household and not for a single individual, which means whole household or the whole family, not a single individual, which means if there is a family and they want to work under this particular scheme, the whole family will be provided 100 man days of work, which means supposing there are 3 members, or let's say there are 4 members in the family, all of them want to work, so every single member would only be provided 25 days of work, such that the total would be 100 man days. So all 4 members, every single member working for 25 days in a particular year, the total is 100 man days. So basically the 100 days of employment is to be provided to every household and not to every single individual. Now again, employment will be provided near the place of residence of the applicant. The wages would be paid at the minimum wage which are prevalent in that particular state. So for example, if the minimum wage rates as prevalent in a particular state, let's say the minimum wage rate is rupees 200 in a particular day, so 100 days of employment would mean that that family, the household, will earn 200 into 100 is equal to 20,000 rupees in a particular year through this particular scheme. So this is how the scheme ensures livelihood security. Now there is legal entitlement also. I have told you right in the beginning that the employment is guaranteed. In case the government is not able to provide employment to the applicant goes and requests to be enrolled into this particular scheme and to be provided employment. If the government is not able to do that, then the government will have to provide an unemployment allowance. The time limit which has been set is 15 days. So take an example. Suppose I am an applicant and go to the government and I demand this manual work under this particular scheme on, let's say, 10th of May. If the government is unable to provide me manual work till 25th of May in the next 15 days, then the government will instead be paying me an unemployment allowance. So the whole idea is that if somebody demands work, he or she or the family to which that person belongs, he or she belongs, that family should be getting work if in case they demand it. So in a way, to an extent, this can be called to be some kind of an expression of the right to work, because the applicant can demand, he can exercise his right to work by demanding wage employment. In case he does not get wage employment even on request, then he'll be paid some compensation, he'll be paid an unemployment allowance. Now the scheme is implemented mainly by the Gram Panchayat, so there are no contractors involved, so that the contractors do not exploit. Many times the contractors may go on to exploit the actual people who are working under the scheme, so the role of contractor was altogether eliminated in this particular scheme. So it is implemented mainly by the Gram Panchayats and through the Gram Pradhans. And in this particular scheme, there are provisions for what all work is allowed under this scheme. Naturally, if you are employing some workers in a particular village, or employing people from different families in a particular village, so naturally you'll have to give them some work. But what work should be done? So all the possible works that can be done under this particular scheme, so there is a list which has been created. So all such works have been actually mentioned in that particular list. So all those kind of works can be done under this particular scheme. The workers who enroll under this particular scheme, they can be asked to do at one of the works which has been mentioned in the list, right? And there is provision for monitoring also and transparency also, but we are not going into too much of detail here. But then there are provisions so that the implementation of this scheme can be monitored, and there is complete transparency, there is no corruption. So there are all the provisions already there in this scheme, naturally. But of course, implementation in India, not only in this particular scheme but in all other schemes, is a big issue. But as of now, we are not going into that. I'm just giving you a basic idea about what all provisions are there in different schemes, including in this particular scheme. So we are not actually basically analyzing the quality of implementation. But yes, there have been implementation issues, and this is not specific to this particular scheme but in other schemes as well. So what are the other impacts of this particular scheme? Environment protection. How? See, I've told you that under the scheme, when the worker comes and demands work, he'll be made to work. He may be asked to construct a road, he may be asked to provide his labor to construct a road, or maybe to construct a canal or some kind of an irrigation network. He might be building a check dam, he might be involved in constructing a check dam or a village wall to prevent soil erosion or landslides. So all these things ultimately will go on to protect the environment, right? So that is why environment protection has been mentioned as one of the impact. We have said that in this particular scheme, the main objective is to provide employment, but the second objective is to also create durable assets. So all these people who are working under these schemes, they would simply not be provided employment, they would be made to create some durable assets. So if the people working there, they are made to create assets which can help check soil erosion, for example check dams, check बांध जिनको हम हिंदी में बोलते हैं, check dams, or maybe walls to prevent landslides. So naturally there would be an element of environment protection also. Again, it has also empowered rural women. The reason is that in many villages, when the male folks migrate to urban areas, the rural villages, you would find so many families in which the male folk has already migrated to some urban area. So generally the females are left behind. Now they have an opportunity to demand employment, because the whole family is guaranteed 100 days of employment. So any one member can demand employment, so even the women folks can demand employment, and once they demand it, they will be getting that wage employment, which means they would be able to earn some money, and they would not only be dependent on the remittances sent to them by their male family members from urban areas. So there is an element of women empowerment also. Naturally, since you are also providing some kind of income augmentation to rural families. For example, I told you, even if the minimum wage in a particular state is 200 rupees per day, and if you are providing somebody an employment for 100 days, which means 200 into 100 is almost 20,000. So this kind of income augmentation is happening, and this may prevent some of the people from migrating from rural areas to the village area, to the urban areas, which they were earlier doing because they were not earning that much. So now, since they are earning at least 20,000 rupees more in a particular year, they may decide not to migrate at all. So this can also check, and this has been checking rural to urban migration. In fact, I'm reminded of a case. This particular case appeared in a news article in probably Business Standard. Earlier, what used to happen before this particular scheme was implemented, people from Bihar, migrant labor from Bihar, used to go to Punjab to work in the fields there. But once this particular scheme was implemented, in Punjab, the labor wages increased. Can you understand the connection? The connection was, since the laborers who were earlier migrating to Punjab to work in the fields, they started getting employment in their own village, they stopped migrating. Quite a significant number of them, they stopped migrating. They stopped going to Punjab every year during the cropping cycle to cut the crops there, and because of which there was a scarcity of laborers in Punjab. And naturally, when there is a scarcity of some commodity, the price of that commodity increased, and that is why the labor wages increased in Punjab. So this was the kind of impact that this particular scheme has had and has continued to have. Okay, now let us move on to the Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana. Basically, the genesis was an integrated rural development program, which was then renamed and redesigned as Swarn Jayanti Gramin Swarojgar Yojana in 1999. Swarn Jayanti because it was almost 50 years of our independence. Then we had the same program with some slight modifications here and there, was renamed as National Rural Livelihood Mission in 2011. And then now in 2015, in the first term of this current government, Modi government, the scheme was re-christened as Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana. So that is something not very important for you to cram it up. The basic idea is to just give an basic knowledge about how the scheme has evolved over the years and what was the genesis of this scheme. Now, what are the basic objectives of this particular scheme? Organizing rural poor into SHGs. So what happens under this scheme is, people in rural areas, they are encouraged to organize themselves into SHGs, and then they are provided some credit so that they can carry on their businesses, so that they can start some business venture, or maybe they can start some cooperative business entity. So that is the basic idea. You have to organize people into SHGs, self-help groups, which can have maybe 10, 15, 20 members, and then these groups are expected to set up their own business, or maybe to start some kind of a business venture, a small business venture, and for that purpose credit is provided to these SHGs, self-help groups. So this is the main idea behind this particular scheme, and this is how this scheme is actually implemented. So the same thing has been mentioned here: organizing rural poor into SHGs, providing catalytic capital. Catalyst, you understand in chemistry, catalyst is something that speeds up the reaction. So basically, catalytic capital is something that speeds up the formation of SHG and setting up of a business by the SHG. So that kind of initial capital is provided by the government. The main objective is to promote self-employment, so that these people who have organized themselves into SHGs, they become self-employed, or they may carry out some kind of a business, or and they may have some earning opportunities. So the promotion of self-employment is skilled wage employment opportunities. What do we mean by skilled wage employment opportunities? Basically those jobs in which skills is required, in which you require some certain level of skills. Nobody without a skill can perform that job. So those kind of jobs are basically called skill jobs. So skilled wage employment opportunities are being provided to the members, not directly, but by way of organizing them into some kind of a self-help group, and by providing them some kind of initial credit so that they can actually start their own business enterprise, or start some kind of a gainful activity through which all the members may be able to earn something. And this way, this scheme is able to achieve its objective of poverty alleviation, poverty reduction. The next scheme that we are going to discuss is the Pradhan Mantri Gramin Awas Yojana. You can have a look at the logo. Again, the genesis was in Indira Awas Yojana, which was launched by the Rajiv Gandhi government in 1985. Then this was rechristened as the Pradhan Mantri Gramin Awas Yojana 2015. As the name suggests, the basic idea behind this particular scheme is to provide housing for rural poor, but please understand that it is only meant for the BPL category, not for APLs, so below poverty line. So that we can provide housing to people who are below poverty line in rural areas. The main objective is this, to replace all the temporary houses in the rural areas with pakka houses, and cash assistance is provided under this scheme. So some kind of a subsidy is this scheme provides for some kind of a subsidy which is provided to BPL families who want to construct their pakka houses, and cash assistance is provided. And the houses should be having sanitary latrines, not the dry latrines which used to have in earlier times. Sanitary latrines, smokeless kitchens, chulhas, smokeless kitchens, right? Then they should be having electricity and a water connection. So these things have to be there to make the family eligible to obtain cash assistance from the government. So this is the whole idea behind this particular scheme. Now let us move over to Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. Again, you can understand what is the main objective. This kind of logo you must have seen in so many roads which connect the main road to so many roads which connect the main road to the villages. You must have seen this particular kind of signpost, and this basically means that this particular road is being constructed under the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. So all weather roads to unconnected villages. All weather roads means they can operate throughout the year. So naturally there will be pakka roads to those villages which are hitherto unconnected. So roads are being constructed to these kind of villages which are otherwise unconnected from the urban areas. So that is the main objective of this particular scheme. And as of now, almost every single day 130 kilometers of roads are being constructed across the country. So this is a figure for the whole country. 130 kilometers of road on an average every single day they are getting constructed. Naturally, the whole idea is to connect the village through a pakka road, so that if there is a problem in the village, let's say there is a health emergency, the people can rush to the district hospitals or to the district centers. Again, those who want to go for education and those who want to go to the district center for education, they can do that. The farmers in the village, they can carry their produce to the district center to sell it there, and maybe this way they might be able to earn better. They might be able to earn a high return for their produce. So this is the basic idea behind this particular scheme. Let us discuss the other scheme that we have, the National Social Assistance Program. Now what is National Social Assistance Program? Basically financial assistance is provided to elderly, those who are in the age group of above 60, senior citizens which we call, the widows, and the persons with disabilities, physically disabled persons. And the term has nowadays been changed. We say person with special abilities rather than saying persons with disabilities. So under this there are different schemes which are part of this NSAP, National Social Assistance Program. The first one is Indira Gandhi National Old Age Pension Scheme. The target beneficiaries are people belonging to the BPL families and those who are above 60. To senior citizens belonging to BPL families, you can have a look at this particular photograph. Then we have the other scheme, Indira Gandhi National Widow Pension Scheme, which is meant only for BPL widows in the age group of 40 to 59 years. Now, the question is, what happens to this widow once she attains an age of 60 years? Because we are limiting the number of beneficiaries through this age criteria. We are saying only 40 to 59 years. So this particular assistance is being provided to widows from BPL families. But then what happens to the widow when she crosses 59 years and she is 60 years of age? Then she would be eligible for Indira Gandhi National Old Age Pension Scheme. And so she would not be able to receive any more assistance under the widow pension scheme. So that is the basic idea. The idea is that should not be no overlap. There should be no overlap. One individual should be assisted through one particular scheme only. Right, so that is the basic idea, and that is why this particular age criteria has been set up, 40 to 59 years. Then we have this disability pension scheme for those belonging to BPL and above 18 years of age, and the disability level is above 80%, and this has to be certified by a doctor. So such people with disabilities above 18 years of age, which means adults, and having a disability of above 80% and belonging to a BPL family, they are provided assistance under this particular scheme. And then we have got a national family benefit scheme, wherein if the primary breadwinner, who is the primary breadwinner? Let's say there's a family of 4, father, mother and 2 children. The father goes for the job and he's the only one who is earning something, so he's the primary breadwinner, right? There are families in which the mothers can be the primary breadwinners, right? So the person in the family who earns the highest, in case there are more than one member doing jobs, and if in case there is just one member doing the job, naturally he is that particular person would be the primary breadwinner. So in the event that the primary breadwinner unfortunately dies in the age group of 18 to 64, then the family will be provided a lump sum amount of rupees 10,000. Now why this age bracket has been given? See, 18 to 64 is the age group when somebody is expected to work and provide for his family. So naturally, if the breadwinner is in this particular age group, he is expected to work and provide for the family. In case he dies, then who is going to provide for the family? And that is why in such an event, the family of the deceased will be provided this lump sum of rupees 10,000, right? Now Annapurna scheme, again under this particular scheme, 10 kg of free rice every month to BPL senior citizens is provided. Now you may feel that all these are small amounts. Indira Gandhi National Old Age Pension Scheme, the amount is again very small, it's around 1,000 rupees. But the amount may be small for people like us who have been leading a more privileged life. But for people who are destitute, who are suffering real poverty in the rural hinterland of the country, for them even rupees 1,000 is a big amount for them. And that is why these social assistance programs are very popular among this section of the society. Again, we have another scheme which is called the Shyama Prasad Mukherjee National Rural Mission. The pronunciation can be Rurban also. The whole idea is rural plus urban, and that is why this particular term has been coined. Otherwise there is no such term in the English language, RURBAN. Rural plus urban. Now what is the meaning of this? The picture explains everything. Atma Gaon ki and Suvidha Shehar ki, which means in a village you are providing the facilities which are otherwise only available in a urban area. So that is why this particular scheme is being called Rurban. And have a look at the icons on the top. The cylinder, which means you are being provided fuel, electricity, housing, you are being provided education, you are being connected through a Pakka road network, and you are being also provided communication facilities. So that is the whole idea behind this particular scheme, to provide urban facilities, urban amenities in rural areas. Actually the genesis was the late President Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, who actually advocated providing such urban amenities in rural areas. And at that point of time we had a program called PURA, P-U-R-A, provision of urban amenities in rural areas. So that was the beginning of this particular approach, and now we have got this Shyama Prasad Mukherjee National Urban Mission. Improving quality of life in rural areas is the objective. Providing urban amenities, we have already seen some of the icons which are being shown here: roads, communication networks and technical and professional institutions. One very peculiar thing about this particular scheme is that it is being implemented under the PPP model, which is the public-private partnership model. Naturally, because the government does not have this much money available with it, it cannot keep on funding all such schemes across the country. It cannot keep on contributing to infrastructure development in every single village in the country. So what government has decided is to enroll the private entities into this particular scheme, wherein the private entities would come with capital. They would chip in with their money. They would plus also chip in with their expertise, management expertise and project implementation expertise, and naturally they would not do it for free, and they would be doing it to earn something in return once the project is completed, right? So it's not as if they are doing it for free. So this is what model is being used for this particular scheme, the PPP model, enrolling private capital and management expertise for providing urban amenities in rural areas. The last scheme which we are going to discuss today is the Integrated Watershed Management Program. Now, what is a watershed? I'll give you an example what watershed is. Watershed basically is an area in which all the water that is received from the rainfall is drained through a common point. Now, what does this mean? This seems a little difficult to understand, right? So all the water that is received through the rainfall, it drains through a common point. I'll give you an example. Suppose, and this is a hypothetical example. Now, suppose in Pithoragarh, all the water in the central valley that we have here in Pithoragarh, suppose all the water that is received through the rainfall, it drains through the Raigad, right? Then this whole area, because all the water that is falling down as rainfall, all is getting drained through the common point which is Raigad, then this whole area would be called a watershed, right? And this is the meaning of watershed. You can have a look at the dictionary meaning of watershed also. You can refer to some geography book for this, right? Now, what are the objectives of Integrated Watershed Management Program? Conserving and developing natural resources. So, conserving natural resources like soil, vegetation cover and water. Preventing soil runoff, preventing soil erosion because of excessive rainfall. When there is excessive rainfall, there might be chances of soil erosion, soil runoff. And how do you prevent it? By growing vegetation, because the vegetation will hold the soil and it would not allow it to simply erode along with the rainwater. And again, you can also do this using the rainwater harvesting and recharge of groundwater table. This is one kind of a check dam which is used for rainwater harvesting. The water will be collected here during the periods of excess rainfall, and then it would seep down and the groundwater table would also be recharged. Plus, it would prevent any soil erosion because of excess rainfall also, that would be prevented. This water can be used to feed the cattle. This can also be used for irrigation purpose when the rainfall season is over. So that is how and why these rainwater harvesting structures are used. So these kind of structures are also constructed under this IWMP, Integrated Watershed Management Program. Then we have got regeneration of natural vegetation. As I said, you are going to regenerate natural vegetation so that it can hold soil and prevent soil erosion. Afforestation, growing trees. Pasture development. Pasture is where the cattle graze, charaga. So that is again very much required in rural areas, because generally most of the families, they do have cattle. So they are, and many of them are engaged in cattle rearing, and they might be selling the produce in the market also. So they need pastures wherein they can leave their cattle to graze. So pasture development is another objective that is aimed at increasing crop productivity, introducing multi-cropping and diverse agro-based activities. Now, okay, let me discuss increase. How do you increase crop productivity? Because see, first thing, water is always there so that you can use it when the rainfall is scant. You are also preventing soil runoff. You are preventing soil erosion. So all that would lead to increase in crop productivity. Then introducing multi-cropping. Multi-cropping means it is different from crop rotation, right? Multi-cropping means growing in the same cropping season. In the same cropping season, if you grow more than one crop on the same piece of land, side by side, then it is called multi-cropping. Why do you do multi-cropping? Because supposing when you grow in hilly areas, you might have seen in the same piece of land, in the same cropping cycle, there are people in their kitchen garden who are growing more than 4, 5, 6 different vegetables in the same cropping season, which means in the same season, same months of the year. So maybe in the Z season, May, June, they are growing the same kind of they are growing 5 to 6 different types of vegetables on the same piece of land, and this becomes multi-cropping. Why? Because one of the crop might be repelling the pests which might harm the second crop. So they're basically you're growing 2 crops, A and B. A might be getting impacted by pests. A might be affected by pests, but you are growing B also, so that what happens is B repels the pest, so the pests are not going to infect A. So this is one of the objective why you go for multi-cropping. So the basic idea is that under this particular program, we also incentivize and encourage multi-cropping and agro-based activities. Agro-based activities are those activities in which the raw material that we obtain from agriculture, they are processed further. For example, using the apples to produce jam, using the crop produced to whatever crop you are having or the fruits that you have grown, they are turned into pickles, achar making is one, papad making is another. So they are all agro-based activities. Or maybe using the sugarcane molasses to produce something else. The rice husk is used to produce cattle feed. So these are all agro-based activities, and they are basically being incentivized so that people in the rural areas, they may be able to earn more. Their earnings may be increased. So sustainable livelihood and increase in household incomes, that is what is the basic idea. Increase in household incomes, you can understand. Why sustainable livelihood? Because you are also conserving the nature, you are taking care of soil, vegetation cover and water. That is why sustainable livelihood. Now that we have discussed all these schemes, the main schemes which are being spearheaded and led by the department, by the Ministry of Rural Development, in the next video session we will be discussing the other schemes which are being managed and administered by the other ministries. Thank you.